All right. Christian, you ready? Okay.
Yes, and the recording started.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for taking some time this afternoon to tune in to our discussion today. What is going to happen as part of this discussion is we're going to be able to go through a good bit of the feedback that we have gotten from folks in the community, as well as have other opportunity time for you all to express if there are items of significance or importance, priorities that you would uh, like to make sure that are considered, and then ultimately work up to our set of actions to get out to the public as a draft in the next month. So with that said, we're going to hit two other points of background that we didn't have a chance to hit last time. And from a perspective of the participation that we've had through this process, your being part of this is just continuing to let us build an understanding of what people have as a concern or as a consideration for really what the comprehensive plan is going to do in guiding the next 10 years of efforts within the township. So this is a very important document, and look forward to talking about uh, some other background information, and then getting into where there has been some focus of the what we've heard over the last month and a half. And so let's get started with that. If you are wanting to have the previous information from from outreach number one, you'll be able to access all of that as part of what the township has out on its website. If there are specific questions about the location of that information, Greg, maybe we can come back to that before we sign off with everyone. But let's get underway. All right. As a matter of just sort of what we want to do this evening and where we are, this is meeting number or outreach point number 2, and there will be again another one in May. If you have something going on in your homes or this as part of rules of engagement, or if you're still at your work or have other things, if you could mute yourself while you're not speaking, that would be helpful. And sort of as we've gone through the months of having this kind of togetherness, if you would like to use the chat feature, please feel free to do so. Those points will be saved as part of this meeting as it's being recorded. This recording will also be given to the township, and they'll be able to post it as they have done and have access to the other types of engagement as part of the project. If you would like to speak when we get to any certain point, you're welcome to use the raise your hand feature. And we just stay focused because we have about an hour, 10 minutes, hour and 15 minutes. Want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to share what is on their mind. All right. Then we'll hit on building on some of the land use discussions that we had last time and some of the demographic discussions. There is an element of connectivity there in the interests of what we've heard from people, as well as pulling from census information. The transportation network within the township has got quite a lot of points that are important for people in context of getting to work. 94% of the residents do use this traffic network for getting to work by car if they're headed out of the community. There are 3 bus routes that are in neighboring areas, and that is something I think that is important from some of the past participation and things that people have highlighted as to how can that either better serve or a tie in with the community's needs. There are a few access points in terms of surrounding communities, but there are these elements of topography and the water courses, right? that also are shaping where those things can happen. So the maintenance challenges that go along with that topography, go along with sort of the finite items, finite corridors within the community, are ones that are affected. Some of you may even live nearby. Some of those have been affected by the route that you take from one place to another, and that that's altered, some of these things. There is 36% of the township's municipal budget in the general fund is allocated actually to roads and maintenance. That is quite a significant percentage, because these projects are ones that need attention, and the collaboration that the township has been doing with others to try and even get some fundings for those is something that is happening now and is anticipated that it could continue to happen. So planning for that appropriately is going to be important. Then sort of off the course of roads, but a corridor that has been important now going on a second decade is the trail, Great Allegheny Passage. You have quite a gem. And that actually is, while it's a connectivity piece, quite frankly, also starts to move into how is that an element of economic development and stability. So something people have been exploring as part of this project. When we look at sort of the volume of traffic on different roads, there are no roads, corridors that have more than 15,000 vehicles, sort of that average daily traffic volume. That is in all directions, and just that corridor studied in totality. 3 miles of the township do have volumes of 10 to 15,000 average daily trips. Then you can see here that there are 9 miles that have between 5 and 10,000 average daily trips. 9 more miles that have 2 to 5,000. And the greater majority, the clear majority of traffic within the township are on roads that have less than 2,000 average daily trips. So a few roads that are of regional significance and those regional traffic levels, the coordination that the township does with those entities, the state, if it's a bridge related to some of the things with the county's facilities, those are very important discussions, and where those all fall. Okay. Sensitive natural resources. In our outreach opportunity number 1 back last month, there was some discussion about the forests and farmlands. 62% of the township is tree covered. That is quite a significant number, notable number. 15% of the township is farmland. That is both in fallow and active condition. And so those elements of character are ones that people have been focusing in on, and how that retaining those kinds of landscapes is significant. So 70, not quite 80% of the township is having that kind of coverage, right, with trees and or sort of agricultural components. There are 27 miles of creeks, and then of course the river along the perimeter that are part of your community. That's the equivalent of driving on the highway for almost a half an hour. And so where we're going to be talking about some of these things, it gets into how what policies and what types of plans are important from an ordinance perspective or from a general planning perspective, and how that folds into some of the things that the township has the opportunity to shape coming out of the comprehensive plan. Underneath over half of the township, there has been mining activity. And there's also a dozen, more than a dozen well locations, natural gas wells, both active and plugged within the township, capped. And then some of the impacts that others have mapped as part of their studies look at the abandoned mine drainage, mine blowouts, land subsidence, and waste deposits. So there is a set of impact from past activity that the township has visible, but some from the rights of way, some just from aerial photos, right? So the steep slope areas that are shown on the image to the right of your screen are in that sort of peach shading. And this is also, when we look at where homes have been built, has definitely affected the locations and will continue to impact if there is a growth, or as there is growth in the future, where those kinds of development can go. Because staying away from steep slopes, these are quite steep, greater than 25%. So those are shown. The floodplain is also shown in the dark blue area. So quick highlights there from some of the resources, sensitive resources within the township. So in sort of conclusion of the background information, what I wanted to do is share with you 2 rounds of questionnaire. And Christian, you can let us know when you're ready to put those polls up about the second questionnaire, okay? All right. So over the last several weeks related to public outreach number 1, we asked a set of questions to individuals. And over just about 400 people participated in this survey. It's fantastic. The township has gained so much information and feedback from folks, and are very thankful that we're able to look at the information in this way. But a representation of why people have chosen Elizabeth Township is there's a clear majority of the proximity to family is something that draws people and retains residents within the township. The quality of the school district was shared as a point by about 150 people. Each of these figures represents 50 people that responded as a positive to one of these reasons. The location of the community, sort of overall within the community, is something that is going to be important for them. The river, Youghiogheny River, there were 100 people that thought about that as something, excuse me, went backwards. Safety, I should highlight safety, why they have chosen the township. The other remaining items were within about 50 people of the 400 that have said that lot size was important to them, parks and recreation, amenities were important, the resale value of property, advice from families or friends, and then sort of the building sizes or sort of the configuration and style of homes and businesses. So again, highlighting a lot of people have chosen Elizabeth Township because of that proximity to family and the school district. All right, question 2. Of the township's park and recreation amenities, which do you visit most frequently? Round Hill Park came out full swing. The Riverfront Trail was about half of the people participating do visit the trail. And in some cases where they're also calling that as part of the Youghiogheny River. Athletic fields that are by about a quarter of the people. And then the others, golf courses, neighborhood parks and playgrounds, the community center and hunting grounds we're within that context of everyone. So several people also expressed that they do not have any participation in those. Okay. Janet, if you're on your phone, AJ just wanted me to confirm that you're able to see everything, get in. Could you give me a thumbs up maybe? I do see you. Okay. All right. Question number 4. How many years have you lived in the township? So the individuals, the 400 individuals that participated in this survey, there were 250 of them who have lived in the township more than 20 years or more. Having this base of residents is something where you all are invested in what is happening within the community. And we look at the other types of resident sort of timeframes, and those are much less. Really, when we look at sort of those under 5 years, we have a total of about 100. And so then we look at 6 to 10 and the 11 to 12 year timeframes. All right. Now this one is also thinking about where do people look at shop for their services. Some of this information was shared last time, and we wanted just to identify that sort of pictorially, a majority of people are going outside of the township for most of their services. Where that is a little bit different is actually within the personal services, those kinds of things, both as well as household or business services. So in the middle of the page here, and then household services, right? Or sort of that, if it's contractor, if it's a trusted HVAC type of individual. So they're looking at how they identify with what's in the community, and then we ask them to take a look at what's going on outside of the community. Personal goods, whether this is 2020 or it's just as our lives continue to shift, has gone mostly to, or not mostly, but it is the one item that looks at online the most. Now, Christian, is this a good point for you?
Yes.
All right.
So I will pull up the poll here. Essentially, this poll is going to ask if you had the chance to complete the round 2 questionnaire, because we're going to be comparing some of the results we got online, and we want to make sure that your input's included if you didn't get a chance to do that.
Should I stop? Oh, you got me. Great. So if you could let us know, that would be helpful. If you had a chance to respond to the round 2 questionnaire. Okay. Couple more. All right. We've gotten 11 responses, and everyone that has responded has taken this questionnaire. So this is fantastic because we'll be able to talk about how what you've shared relates to all the others who have shared. Do you want to end that poll, Christian?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So we close that up and we can get to questionnaire number 2. All right. We ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right. As we go into question number 2, round number 2, excuse me. There was a question of in what way is it important, to what extent is it important that the township encourage and accommodate new construction of housing units? And you can see, based on, this is done by percentage, the 40% of the individuals thought that it was somewhat important. And then we almost have a triangle here where there is the opportunity to take a look at some folks that think it's extremely important, and an equal number of individuals, participants, saying it is not important. And then, of course, others that are thinking it's very important. And then opposite of that, not so important. So there's a mixed set of responses to this one. Where this is significant is trying to consider what kind of housing units or to whom they're geared, right? To what is that market? What is that sort of set of price points? What is that density? How does that impact existing neighborhoods? Are these new neighborhoods, right? Or in some cases, as some have discussed, are these points where there's the opportunity to almost do some infill of residential development, meaning maybe some of the parcels that have gotten skipped over and taking a look at those. So we're not making new neighborhoods, but furthering or bolstering existing neighborhoods. Okay, we'll come back to that shortly.
Carolyn.
Yeah.
All right. So can you go back? All right. One of the things I think you want to point out is the response there, this somewhat important, is significantly different than a lot of the discussions that everybody has had to date. So I think even at the last meeting, that was one of the things that some persons who had joined the meeting clearly were expressing. They don't necessarily have a choice in terms of where to live, and as their family gets larger, they're finding that they may have to be moving outside of the township because they can't find a new house or a larger home with the amenities that they're looking for. So I was a little surprised to see that so many, in terms of the questionnaire, had fallen kind of in that somewhat important. Hopefully we can get you guys to talk about that. And while 20 of you on a Zoom call isn't representative of the community, but we'd like to get some additional thoughts in terms of that. This second thing, I think that also came out and related to the housing through all the discussion is, I think everybody has clearly said, as soon as a house goes up for sale, you're lucky to, first of all, even get it listed on the multi-list because a friend of the family or my cousin's neighbor's nephew's sister's brother somehow gets dibs on the house, and so they're only for sale for a very fleeting moment, in incredibly a very short period of time. So that tells us there's is a great demand. So I'm just, again, trying to get everybody to give us a little bit more insight in terms of maybe why people responded the way they responded, or if you guys have a different thought on terms of that particular question. So Carolyn, let's circle this one, let's finish, and then maybe come back to this because I think this is a really important one.
All right, because I think there are a couple other points like that, AJ, that are going to be taking a look here. So the second question is taking a look at the importance of potentially, or the development of an indoor and or outdoor community space that's oriented around recreation and social activities. It has a very similar response, right, in terms of the majority being somewhat important. I'm going to go to the next one. Focus and organize efforts to repair and maintain local roads and bridges. Extremely important, sort of came out as very important, did, and almost 90% between those two. So from a perspective of AJ, I think where you're going, I think what is valuable about what people have the opportunity or having the opportunity to share is we're looking at quite a number of the types of actions that and the efforts and the energies that are going to need to go into some things, and sort of this relative relationship of where they fall. And based on this one, that road network is very high. Encourage and accommodate additional commercial development and redevelopment. So this one also has about half of the participants looking greater than 50%, 60% are looking at it is very important or extremely important for this additional commercial redevelopment or redevelopment. So I think AJ, your points about sort of that residential focus, where we have heard that loud and clear last time, and there are some very important points. It was interesting for several of us to be thinking about this one because it was actually looking at a greater value of importance to the non-residential. So something to consider. Attract investment and development related to the Gap Trail and the Youghiogheny River recreation activities. A few moments ago, we were talking about the potential as that may relate to economic development, right? Recreation as the opportunity for sort of a focus area of economic development. That is something that the general participation and responses are supporting as part of that being important as well. Very important being the greatest reply. Question 6, promoting community assets. This is schools, safety, open space, and aimed at attracting younger families and investment. So whether we're looking at sort of what draws people in, right? There's this family component, but there are also these amenities, and being able to highlight those, right, as valuable and true amenities that are people have the opportunity to engage in and be part of, and broadening that sense of community. Extremely important and very important. Again, the majority of the responses to this. Question 6. Question 7, partnering with stakeholders to support the improvement and or redevelopment of former industrial sites and abandoned mine lands. This is looking at some things that were a mixture of importance that people expressed. This question is also stemming from some of the opportunities that people throughout the process have highlighted about, is there looking at sort of a higher and better use of some of former sites and the potential for them, whether it's for recreation, whether it's for other kinds of development. So there is a mixture of about half of the people are saying this is very extremely important, and the other half not so much. Encouraging sustainable, environmentally conscious practices related to construction and buildings. So that the township can't require certain kinds of construction, but there is always an element that the township, any municipality can encourage different types of practices. This is sometimes related to energy efficiencies, or if it's related to, again, the character and the impacts of the kinds of development within what you have established, as well as reflective of your topography. So it can be anything from grading to materials. This is something that the majority of individuals identified as important. Encouraging housing options tailored for older adults. So AJ, I'm going to go back to your comment because questions number 1 and 2, right, do have a relationship with question 9 in part. I think this is something, if we can come back to this one for that residential discussion, a bit different quite different than some of the things that people had expressed over the last month. There are two more. This is the next to last one. Partnering to support the expansion of pedestrian bike trails connecting parks, open space, recreation facilities, and neighborhoods. So the majorities identified this as very important to extremely important, actually just about half of the people, and somewhat important to others. So this was really looking right at just not the connectivity system for the roadways, but when we overlay it with where all of the open spaces are and those publicly accessible spaces. So not needing to necessarily rely upon the car as 90 plus percent of the people getting to work do. All right. And last but not least, foster additional convenience and efficiency of municipal operations related to resident and/or business interaction. So as the township does every year, takes a look at what the resources are that are available and those allocations to them. So the way in which that people have replied that this is important, that process for looking at what kinds of projects there are, the ways in which those projects get done, is something that people are ready to understand, I think, a little bit more through some of the comprehensive planning process and being able to share even some of the basic components of those things. The township is working on its communication plan that is actually the way in which it can share more information with you all sort of efficiently and conveniently. So
Carolyn,
yes.
Carolyn, Ted had asked through the chat, why don't you give an example? Because the convenience and efficiency of municipal operations, I'm not sure is resonating with everybody as.
Certainly. Each year, the township does post its budget, its draft budget as an example, and then its adopted budget right at the end of the year after quite the set of discussions and the public meetings and hearings associated with that prior to its adoption. But I think there's the consideration for being able to identify how some of those dollars are spent from sort of a year-to-year basis, right? As well as essentially the level of completion. Possibly there's a capital improvement project to, I'll just pick a recreation one, to update some facilities within a park, okay? And so in, we'll call it year one, maybe those resources are allocated to doing the planning for that. And then in years 2 and 3, there is a construction project associated with those improvements. And then year 4, it gets completed. So sort of a quick timeline of this example. So the way in which that information, sort of the status of that project and the resources that go along with it that are being allocated to it are identified and then are spent. And then what ultimately that product is, or along the progress of that project, being able to use things like an online resource and having the opportunity for people to understand, how, again, those resources were allocated and then to where they're going and showing the progress towards the completion. And essentially then everyone being able to celebrate, right? That has come to fruition. So that would be opportunities, I think, in the outreach or the communications plan that the township's putting together and the different avenues for communicating of it and the way in which it's done, even pictorial in some cases, right? So the kinds of things that we're exploring as part of the comprehensive plan and getting and setting the stage.
Hey, Ted, does that clear that up?
Yes, that clears that up, but I didn't get that. Whenever I read this, that isn't what I interpreted what this meaning was. So I would have answered differently had I understood that. And I had sent you another question about item 7 about the difference between cleaning up the waterways that are like, for instance, down by Sutersville that has areas that being put into the river versus building a new industrial site on a former industrial site. So that's where the confusion about item 7 was. Were you wanting to clean up the areas or just add to another area? What was the meaning behind number 7?
The meaning behind number 7, the intent was the improvement, the cleaning up. So there may be an opportunity somewhere along the way that a former industrial site could have another industrial use in the future. But the first and foremost was cleaning up the environment. And I know you've sat through, some of the other discussions, and that was the first priority. If there was an instance of AMD, could that be addressed? Or was there subsidence or something like that? Could that be addressed? That was the first and foremost item out of question 7. When you had asked, Carol and I both went and read the question, and again, we weren't interpreting it in terms of that somebody was suggesting to redevelop, those industrial sites, and that's what that whole question was. So we thought it should stay as we had it worded. But
I think the other part, AJ, I'd like to kind of add to what you're saying is this question also was one when we looked at quite a number of responses to what people had identified in the round 1 of the questionnaire, as well as some of the other public meeting comment or outreach comments. I think, right, that was exactly to your point, the impetus for the question. So we wanted to ask this in a specific way.
I was just saying that I think there might have been some confusion on the interpretation of what it meant.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a look and how we can fold that into the overall action items that are going to be coming out of this. All right. So we've got about half an hour. So we've hit on the points from what people have shared with us as part of the last couple of weeks, and are very appreciative of what time people have taken. So we'd like to open it up for 2 things. One is to expand on any of these points that you feel are ones that you believe are of a particular priority importance for you. Or if there are other aspects, if you didn't have the opportunity to participate in meeting number 1, but would like to talk about other types of things as we had gone through sort of the round 1 questionnaire, certainly willing to and ready to do that. So can I get a show of hands, or Christian, maybe we can figure out how we can make sure we hear from everyone that wants to talk. If you would like to identify something that's important to you, raise your hand there with that symbol, or turn your microphone on. What we would like to do is make sure that for all the people that would like to share, that we do have time for everyone to do so, so we can gauge that accordingly.
Carolyn, so EB had put something, comment in the chat box. I think let's start off with that. EB, feel free to unmic. Can you give a little bit more, elaborate a little bit more than the comment that you have in the chat box? All right, Carolyn, go ahead. We'll circle back around.
Okay. I can just go down. Bill, would you like to?
Yes. Found question 7 to be rather vague too. There are some people in authority that do not hold the township as unique and a gem as you people do, and are interested in bringing industrial companies in. And, you can clean up an area so you can bring an industrial site in. And I thought it was rather vague. And one other quick question. I took both surveys on our computer. My wife wanted to answer questions on the second round, but because I had already taken the questions, we couldn't get back on again.
Because you have the same IP address?
Yeah, you're the same IP address.
Yeah, but some households have lots of people in them that would want to answer those. So is that change that?
Greg, is there an opportunity, maybe we can get the questionnaire out to them and then we can get their reply?
Sure.
Coordinate with you on that?
So Carolyn, I guess, are you suggesting to eliminate the IP limit?
We can do that, yes.
So Bill, just so you know what we're talking, because we're starting to get into kind of jargon. The IP is a unique address that your computer has. So typically on a survey, so we don't have people stuffing the ballot box, so to speak. You only allow somebody to have one vote, so to speak. So we can remove that, and we'll just have to be watchful in terms of if you and your wife start stuffing the ballot box, we know where you are.
Or perhaps if you ask for a name before you answer the questions to limit.
Very, very fair.
That's very fair.
We can add that to when we open it up.
Yeah,
So
we could do something like that.
also though, when people having the opportunity
To
to look
remain
up.
anonymous, yeah.
Yes. All right, Christian, we'll work on that. And
But Bill, you're saying to go back to the question 7. From your perspective, having a former industrial site be redeveloped for industrial purposes is not, from your perspective, a high priority. If there are legacies, environmental legacies that are on that property, that should be the first priority. Am I right?
Certainly agree with you there, yes. But cleaning up a property so you can put another company in there.
Gotcha. Okay.
so I also I'm thinking, AJ, that will relate to a zoning type of discussion.
Right.
Come time of zoning. All right.
The way I interpreted question 7 was to say that you could like clean up a site and use it for what you consider a higher purpose, like an industrial site, clean it up, put in housing or something like that. But I think it's also important to consider if it's a previous industrial site, and if a new industry can fit in there, that could be an appropriate use also.
Okay.
Yep.
Understood. This portion of action related to different ways in which zoning could get at some of these issues, I think, or these matters, is one we can elaborate a bit. Very good.
Well, Caroline, it's not, though, I don't want to hang just on zoning, because I think there's other opportunities, partnerships, things like that, in terms of being able to, the key takeaway that I'm hearing is the first priority is remedying the environmental legacies, whoever that is. That should be what the immediate focus is. If you can get a property, a piece on ground, back into productive use, that should be another, possible outcome. But the first priority is the cleanup.
Okay.
Anybody disagree with that? Did I say anything incorrect?
Could you restate that, AJ? Could you restate that?
I think what I'm hearing, Bart, is the first priority is to clean up some of the environmental legacies, some of the impairments, whatever those might be. That's first priority. If a piece of ground or a property can be brought to some other productive use, whatever that is, whether it's a residential development, whether it's commercial development, maybe it's just open space that's publicly accessible, that should be falling at the tail. But the first priority is to clean it up, get it to be a healthy place again.
I would agree.
Somebody's really muffled there. I don't know if
Fred?
you,
Fred, you turned on your mic?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on it because I have very strong feelings that we should be trying to clean up some of these legacy sites. But I have a real issue with converting them into heavy industrial, because heavy industrial is going to keep people from moving into the township. People don't want to live near something like this power plant they're talking about building. That's a real negative for the township.
okay.
Okay. Thank you, Fred.
Maybe just to add one thing to that.
Sure.
When you take a site that is a legacy site, you want to clean it up. You don't really want to bring something in that's worse than what's already there.
Okay.
Carolyn,
Yes.
I agree with Fred, and we're really having a problem with this on the industrial sites, because some of the sites really were not industrial sites and have been zoned residential for quite a long time, and to revert back to a mined place above the trail being industrial again is not a good thing. It doesn't bring us any kudos from anybody to do that. But I want to go to another focus too, if I can.
Yes.
You were worried about some of the answers to some of the questions, and sometimes they were a little bit vague in the way that they're put. And I know it didn't sound like that to you, but it sounds like that when you're reading them to a lot of other people, because people did want to have new housing come in. But we can't have housing come in if there's no roads and things like that to accommodate the houses in the first place, and to identify the places that are already open and looking for space. You know, they already are marked out for spaces for new housing and things like that. I think people would love that. But when the way it was worded just said housing, and it didn't like really specify, are we going to congest the streets more than they already are? Or how are we going to accommodate all those kinds of things? So that was one thing. And if you're looking at our township in the age group of how long we live here, living here over 20 years, obviously we're not going to say we need more senior housing at the moment, because we're still all living here in our houses. So do we need it? Yes, which is why you probably saw a very small portion of people say, yes, we need it, because we want to move from our bigger houses to a smaller space. But for a lot of people, they just want to stay in the house that they have for as long as they have, and without having to move. So to put some carriage houses in, that kind of thing, that people could start out with just a newly married couple and one child or something like that, or to be a senior type place, is a whole different focus. But the way the questions are worded didn't give you that chance to say those kind of things.
Did you submit any comments to Greg? We hadn't gotten any of your.
No.
Up there. Oh, okay.
I'd be very happy to, but I didn't do that.
Yeah, no, I think what you're headed back to a couple of the points in session, or the outreach number 1, right? That where there was the discussion about sort of the established family bonds and all of those kinds of things. And when it relates to figuring out the kinds of things for where could other types of housing occur, or what kinds of housing types those could be, right? And looking out that 10-year window, trying to put that hat on, and that's where we're headed. So I appreciate your comment about wanting to stay in homes, right? I mean, that's where I think you've identified quite a number of people are ready to do that, even though there may be some kind of change later on, right? But being able to stay in your homes. And so that really just grounds, I think, those points that we heard over the last several weeks about people love Elizabeth Township because of the kinds of the kind of community that it is. Not necessarily the houses, not necessarily the businesses, but the people that are there.
Right.
So
Okay.
thank you for coming back to that.
Okay, Carolyn, so chasing this one a little bit further, EB put in the chat box, and I think, is it Pam? Is it Pam? I think it probably parallels where you were thinking, or how you're thinking as well. There does need to be some additional choice. Your hypothesis of how people answer the question may be because there's not an immediate need right now. And I thought what I heard you say, I wrote down carriage house. I use the word granny flats. Accessory dwellings probably need to be permitted somehow in the township, so somebody could rent out maybe the main house to a young family and still live on the property, right? Not leave the property. EB threw out there, is a big difference between having, particularly what we call a downsizing or the missing middle, as they say, in terms of housing, something that somebody doesn't really have to own 2 acres of ground and maintain the ground and maybe as much rooftop. So there's a difference between allowing patio homes versus a 10-story apartment building. I'm pretty sure, because y'all live where you live, I know what the answer is. Having additional density to have more housing choice, there's a line where you lose the rural kind of suburban character. And so having housing choice that you may have a townhouse or a patio home that you can move into is a good thing. Having something that's more dense, like a senior apartment building, would be something that is not Elizabeth Township. Is that fair to say?
Yes, yes, we have quite a few different housing, multi-housing developments in Elizabeth Township. People are not looking to go into that normally. The people that seem to be around here tend to want to just downsize a little bit, like you said, into a patio home or, something like that. Having a huge senior high rise, I don't foresee that here. The people that have lived here that didn't have a choice did go into different places, although they're not huge. They're, I don't know if you know where Kmart is on Route 30, but there's a nice senior place behind that. And a lot of the people from here go out there just because they have special room, it's
Yep.
Something on a small scale like that would probably be okay. I think people would like that. It's just, they don't want something that looks like a big box apartment building for seniors where they kind of feel like they're just stuck. Or even, the young families moving in, and you can put the two of them together in the same building if it's something nice and social.
So that sense of community, right?
Right.
Is, and the livability of a place that's going to continue to foster the sense of community that Elizabeth Township has, right?
Right.
Got it. Okay. That is very helpful. Okay, a few people we haven't had the opportunity to hear from. There is Janet. And if you could just, when you chair, just affirm, what part of Elizabeth Township you live in, that'd be helpful because we can also then make sure we're understanding where some of the neighborhood thoughts may be. Okay. Janet, we can come back to you if you'd like. Scott, would you like to share anything?
He was having trouble getting on, I think.
Okay. Scott, we can come back to you too. Sue?
I live in Howell Plan
Okay.
currently. And I have a nice neighborhood, and you were true when you said, houses don't last long. There's a house down the street. It was on the market for 1 week and it's gone already. It's sold. It's under contract. My personal opinion, I don't plan on being here more than another 10 years. Yes, I am a long-term, a resident, but my children don't live here anymore. And that's what's hard for me. They live on the other side of the state or down south. So yeah, I like where I live. It is convenient. Right now, yes, I'm retired now. My husband and I are retired, and I have a disabled son who is at home with me. But, I would love to downsize, but where do you go? I can't downsize anywhere in the township right now, but I'll stay right now. I'm here, my house is paid for. It's like, I don't need to go anywhere. But yeah, I would like to see, improvement in the area. Yes.
Okay. Are they sort of the amenities that you're talking about, potential improvements, or are you thinking about businesses or the whole bag?
Well, the amenities are nice. I'm not going to say they aren't. Yes, they are. They are nice, but it would be nice if you could get some new business in, yeah, it would be nice, and, the industrial, I don't feel we need the industrial. We need more businesses, private ownership businesses to come into our area.
Okay. I'm writing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sure.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. I can start back at Tom, or if anybody wants to raise their hand, they're welcome to do so. Cindy. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I have a question for you, just a general question. So like when you asked about, did Patty send comment to Greg about the other things that are listed in there, her interpretation of the questions or so forth, when she said that, she said, did you send a comment to Greg? Is there any way to have like just an open forum of comments placed on the comprehensive plan place that someone could do something like that? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do. There is a Gmail address associated with the project as part of the story map page. So we can work with Greg to get that highlighted maybe on the main township page, and it'll tie back into those. Yes.
Right, because it seems like there's some questions that people wanting to ask, but they didn't know the process.
Yeah.
That's just my comment.
All right, thanks. Does that sound good, Greg?
It definitely does. Thank you.
All right, we'll get that squared away. to tie those two items. Okay. Anyone else? Dan or Art, Kyle?
Want to say just a couple of things. One, the idea of a comprehensive plan, there was no, for the last, I've lived here 34 years. There's been no plan in this township since I've been here about where we're going. So the issues about, I think, Bill, you had mentioned the powers that be want something. There's nothing here that anyone wants but to find out which direction we need to go in. And I think that's what the intent of the comprehensive plan is. I think it's Mrs. Hoffman, her comment about, you or someone made the comment about wanting businesses, maybe it was Mrs. Golick, but wanting businesses, but if you don't have homes, businesses won't come here. I have been traveling around the various communities just to see what's going on because I live here, and you need to go out and see. If you've not driven out to Ross Draver or Peters Township or just in the direct area, you see what a lot of communities are doing to enhance their viability. And a lot of that is maybe like patio homes for folks that maybe like want to, if they at a point in their life want to live in a single level home or whatever, they're doing a lot of building like that. And that could be a benefit, and then would be something that would delegate out to have additional businesses. But and again, there are a lot of great things that we're doing, and I think that was certainly highlighted in the plan. But without a plan, not knowing where we're going, and your points are well taken about what you think, but I think there's no like idea where we want to go. We're really looking for your input, and I know from the committee we appreciate you commenting, and the comments are very good, and I think help us to move the process forward. But there's no predetermined idea about where we're headed. So I just wanted to make that clear.
And Bart, it's quite the work when we have now about 500 people that have been sharing their ideas. So I think from a perspective of how all of these things can move forward in a logical way, right, and a responsible way.
We're getting input, right?
The township, the residents and the stakeholders really come out and are sharing some very valuable things. So on the move. Thank you. All right, AJ, are there any other points? We just have a couple more minutes before the session would.
I think someone's waving there.
Yeah. Could I say something?
Sure.
Yes.
Hi. When we're talking about bringing businesses in, the town of Elizabeth, which has no space to expand residences, they're getting all kind of little stores along Main Street popping up, barbershops, candy stores. They're like rejuvenating themselves, and they can't even build new homes, but the people are coming in there. So we have to figure out what's bringing them downtown. Maybe we have no space for these businesses to open up. We need more Alpine villages or more little strip malls like we have in Little Boston. We need space for the businesses to come. We don't have that. That's all I wanted to say.
And I've had some people, we live down along the floodplain, and I've had people stop from the bike trail, inquire if there are properties for sale along the river. They're really interested in getting some riverfront property. I even had one person give me his name and number. Should I come across a house for sale, I could give him a call.
So you're saying in terms of that location and having those things happening all around that is an attraction for desirable location.
We need spaces for small businesses to come. Oh, buildings or vacant buildings that they can then make into businesses. Elizabeth had all those empty storefronts, and they got people in there, and they're rejuvenating the town, but we don't have that.
All right, Carolyn, I'm furiously writing, and I am probably gonna maybe draw ire of everybody, or maybe I captured it right. So here's the 6 key things I heard, and I put them, I'm casting them in an order of casting them as if they are action steps. Okay. I know the world is not linear by any stretch of the imagination, but so first, clean up the environment. I'm saying this real simple too. 2, protect, leverage, and link important green spaces and character. 3, look to the river. 4, improve the township's amenities. That could be anything from parks to recreation center, community center type of thing. 5, broaden the housing choices. And then 6, rezone some areas to stimulate commercial development. Am I kind of on base in terms of what you guys were describing? And Christian, I don't know if you can, I could follow the chat. I'm not sure I could type all that. Clean up the environment, protect, leverage, and link green space and community character. Look to the river. Improve the township, kind of the civic amenities. Broaden housing choices. And rezone some areas to stimulate commercial development. Now, obviously, Carolyn, in there's high priority in terms of roads and services.
Right.
You know, I didn't describe that. That has to get factored in there. But if things need to be viewed in terms of kind of a step-by-step order, to Bart's point, and I fully agree with him, without trying to get additional rooftops, you know, the old adage is retail follows rooftops. I'm not going to be able to support additional retail establishments, businesses, personal services without having a broader set of residential population. So that has to happen. And then somewhere along the way, starting to broaden the zoning so you can have more commercial, then that starts to make sense. And people aren't going to necessarily move to the township if you're not able to address some of the environmental things or improve some of the amenities, because that's what people are looking for. Again, back to the Peters Township, North Strabane types of world, or North Huntington or Ross Ravel. Does that make sense?
I would emphasize that I believe I heard things related to all 6 of these. And I think there are a couple of things that are directly right in the township's purview. And there are other parts of these where the township is a stakeholder, but partnering up for understanding some of those influences and making sure the policies are in line so that they can happen.
Or they're the instigator.
Yeah.
Well, they may not be the doer. To some degree, they have to start the dialogue, the discussion. Kyle, Dan, you guys, any thoughts of what I'm shooting from the hip on that one in terms of just trying to kind of glean what people are talking about?
I'm a little confused on, clean up the environment.
Yeah, it's a real.
That's a tough road to hoe. There has been some pretty serious waste placed in this township in the previous decades, way beyond our capacity to do anything with that.
So the partnering aspect of that then, Kyle, becomes right a focus of the energy, right?
Yeah, I agree. So Allegheny Green Web, to everybody here, you might want to look at their site. They've actually have some plans for the township in the long run, and that might be a very helpful partnership there for sure. Broaden housing options. We are moving forward with our Act 537 to increase the ability to handle new sanitary taps. That's one of the things that has curtailed housing development in Elizabeth Township over the past 10 years is the lack of completion of that plan. As y'all know, the pipeline's in, and another year from now, we'll be able to get as many taps as we can use for new housing. So that'll be very helpful. Expanded connections amongst the parks. That's also being looked at through Allegheny Green Web. It seems like that's a really good group.
So I think one of the things that you just said, Kyle, I think is a good opportunity as we wrap up here. What you identified about the connections, the taps, right, is there are several pieces of the puzzle that go into each one of these, and work and discussions, right, dialogue, and understanding of how it can get threaded together. So there's that global sort of level, and then identifying, okay, what is it going to take to get truly several of those pieces to come together. And so you mentioning taps, probably not a lot of people are thinking about, I mean, that is even an element. So within the comp plan, so that we can, then the community's got sort of, right, this blueprint, this setting the stage, being able to highlight what that important threading is, or what those other pieces, that not so often thought of pieces that influence some of those other discussions. Be able to hit on that. Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. We have come to about 5:45. We're trying to respect everyone's time. Greg, what I think we'll be able to do is coordinate with you over the next day or two, and in the different outlets for the township's communication, we can get the wrap up, get the recording posted. You'll be able to have that, and then back to Ted's question, for the others that were wanting to contribute, having that link readily up in the visible spot as part of the story map and the township website. So we'll keep it going. We're working then toward this list of actions. AJ identified 6 sort of broader level things. Our next step is to fine tune it for the detail to be able to share with you all, and come back together again in May to make sure we're on target. So anything else, AJ or Christian?
Nope.
All right.
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out this evening. Hope you can enjoy the rest of this sunny time we have. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for